This is a topic that you'll see discussed widely on the rum forums, and tropical versus continental aging is a term really specific to the rum world, and we've got the two masters to talk about this.
And I'm absolutely delighted if we've got them backstage. I don't know if we've got them backstage. We have one and only, and someone who is probably my rum Yoda, the Luca Gargano of famous Velier for his fame. And actually, every time I talk to Luca, I feel like I've learned a lifetime's worth of things, and there's so much more to learn. So I'm so excited to have Luca on. And Carsten Vlierboom, who I've never met, but we've been communicating on emails because I'm really excited about what he's doing. And I'm really excited to learn all about Scheer and what they're doing over there. So, Carsten, I love the backdrop. Oh my God, Luca, you need to get the sea back. This is I was not expecting that.
Luca, you need a haircut.
Gents, we have a little feedback on the line. We just need to turn down the speakers a little bit, please. Turn down your speakers a little. It should, so we can hear your wonderful voices.
How are we doing? Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you. Yep. I'm here.
Okay.
Yes.
Luca, how are we doing?
No, I'm looking where I can stop the microphone, but
if the speakers are down a little lower, that should help.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, that sounds a bit better.
That sounds better. We might let you know during the session, but I'm going to hand over to Dawn Davies for this session. But it's absolutely wonderful to see you both. And Luca, I know we had a chat a few weeks back, and Carsten, the first time I met you, I just turned up on your doorstep in Amsterdam. I don't know if you remember, but I just looked up where E&A Scheer was, knocked on the door one day, and you were very kind enough to let me in and talk to us for about an hour about rum as well. So it was absolutely pleasure to meet you there and since. So
thank you, gents. And Mitch is going to have a bit of lunch. Now, the last time I did a tasting with Luca, and we were on stage, it was at the Whisky Show. And to manage Luca, because Luca is one of the most brilliant speakers on the planet, and he likes to talk a lot, I decided I needed an air horn just to be very careful about managing Luca. Well, Luca, the air horn is no more. You'll be pleased to know. Instead, we have the megaphone. So anytime Luca is in, if I need Luca just to kind of maybe let Carsten speak. Beware, Luca. The megaphone is here. No, it's an absolute honor to have you both. And really in this session, I think there's been a lot of talk, and it's something that I'm really interested in because, as Luca knows very well, probably Carsten not so well, but my background's wine, and my background is all about terroir, and terroir for me probably the thing that defines everything about what I've learned and what I've talked about, and part of that is where a product ages or where it comes from, and it's the heart of everything for me. And it's a really interesting, and you guys did a fantastic session at Rumfest last year, which I was able to catch the end of, but it was really, really fascinating. So I kind of wanted to bring that back a little bit, just because I thought it was so interesting, and talk a lot about this idea because it's so topical right now of where you age your rum and how that affects the flavor. And what the future is, because I think there's so much uncertainty around GIs and everything that we really, I think this is a really topic that's close to my heart in terms of terroir and everything. So, one of the kind of questions I wanted to begin with was, Scheer. I mean, Scheer's such an old company. I mean, it started in the 1700s. Is that correct, Carsten?
Yes, correct.
And why did it start? How did it all happen?
Basically, we were trading a lot of goods towards the colonies at the time. So sending out spirits to those people out in the colonies looking for Geneva and that type of stuff. And as traders in those days, you would get product back, and rum would be later on, but rum would be one of the products coming back. Very old company, still partly family owned. Very nice place to be and nice place to work for. And we have some amazing inventories of both tropical and continental aged rums. So I think that's what we're leading to in this in this discussion on aging. We have a lot of options, and aging in the tropics or in continental climates has different effects. Now, why I'm giving you this particular backdrop is because today in the continent it's actually quite tropical. So what you see is, I was thinking, so black tot rum, we're talking about navy rum. So let's give you a backdrop of a bit of water. So I'm on a boat. And just to give some controversy in terms of continental versus tropical, today's climate on the continent is tropical. If I would be to age any rum here right now, it would be tropically aged.
And actually, it was a question I was going to ask more towards the end, and either of you can answer. I mean, climate change must be playing a massive role in what's happening in aging in Europe at the moment. In wine, we're seeing that, it's going up by 1 degree, and, it's really, really affecting things. How do you think this is going to change, or what are you seeing now in these rums that are kind of been in the last, should we say, 5-10 years? I mean, 2003 for me is one of the hottest summers we've ever had. This summer's been really hot. How's that going to affect and change the way that the rums age in Europe?
Well, obviously, temperature is a big factor, and Europe is it's not just Europe. Northern Europe, Southern Europe, you have big temperature differences. You have big climate differences. So I would say climate change. The Mediterranean is coming up north. If you look at the back of me, this looks like the Mediterranean Sea, whereas it's just a lake in the north of Holland. That might show you some of the climate change. But I think that both Luca and myself, when we talk about tropical versus continental aging, we both smile at it and say, there is tropical aging, there is continental aging, but take a look at maybe aging at origin or the climate that stuff is aging in. That is more interesting than the controversy between tropical and continental.
And I 100% agree. I think it's such an interesting concept. It's so if it's a Scottish rum aged in Scotland, that's aged at origin. If it's a rum aged in Jamaica, that's Jamaican. Yeah, that's kind of the whole point, and I 100% agree. At origin is key.
Well, at origin it gives you the most perfect, let's say, the most perfect combination of factors which an origin can bring are the terroir, their production technique, the fermentation technique, the distillation technique, all the traditions that are there, plus the local climate. And even on an island in Jamaica, you will have different microclimates where product ages differently. If you're up north or in the middle of the country, it's different microclimate, and the local people will tell you that. Climate is a big factor.
Sorry, Carsten.
Climate is a big factor.
Yeah. And Luca, are you finding that those changes happening in the Caribbean now? Are you finding that your casks that you've got over there, or when you're talking to the distillers, and especially now with your new distillery, has that affected where you put the aging warehouse? That whole idea of the climate and the locale for the aging?
But I agree with Carsten. We speak about tropical aging. Was born apart John Vray nephew that spoke about tropical aging in the 60s. It was my word to say distillery aging. The big difference is between a rum that is aged at distillery and a rum that is not aged at distillery. This from the point of view of terroir and the point of view of originality. Then what is important for me is to be clear and transparent on the labels. Understand? for me, a Jamaican rum or a Barbados rum have to be aged in Barbados, but that don't mean that a Barbados rum or Jamaican rum aged in England or in France or in Italy are no good. It's impossible that Hamden or Appleton or another or Foursquare become a bad rum if it's aged but it's different. The only thing are different. And if we speak about originality, the real Hamden have to be aged at Hamden. This is my opinion. But there is space for everything and everybody, and Scheer is always very, very, very clear when sell their products. You know, they tell exactly where the rum was aged and if you could or not use the trademark, because the other problem is to use the name of a distillery, and you know there are trademarks. In general, I like everything that is original, but it's my personal pleasure to give a value to the product that I've lived, was produced, distilled, and aged in the country. But I repeat, a good barrel of rum from a good distillery will never become no good. You know? But what is important is to be transparent.
And I think the things that struck me the most is when I tasted the E&B and the NMW side by side, the Continental and the Tropical. You're very transparent on those labels. I mean, it's chalk and cheese, and it's super interesting. And I just wanted to know sort of what made you to decide to do this project, and what's next with it.
The project was a great project because we would like, for the first time, people speak about continental aging, tropical aging, distillery aging, but nobody have never tasted two products very similar from the same marks, same years, continental aged or tropical aged. And so we gave the possibility to do this experience. Then somebody prefer the tropical, some other prefer the continental. I prefer the continental and Carsten the tropical. I'm joking.
Depending on the mark, Luca, you know that.
But you see, this was the first time in the history where it was possible to compare, and this was for me a service given to the rum lovers, rum geeks, and gourmet. So this was our goal. Our goal was not to say that tropical is better than continental, but give a possibility to take this.
It's the experience, it's really it's like you take a twin. Yeah, you have two twin sisters, and one you grew up in Europe, and the other grew up in a tropical climate. And if you meet them 14 or 11 years later, you'll see, just by the skin change, that one climate has a different effect than the other climate. And on these beautiful rums, we saw the big differences. And Luca and myself, we thought about this project, and then we looked at some liquids and like, wow, what's going on here? And there's nice differences, and we should be able to show this to people and to showcase what the differences can be. And it's quite extraordinary that we had just sets of barrels which were comparable and of which one part was tropical age and one part was actually brought to Liverpool fresh and then aged in a moderate climate. Amazing experience, even for ourselves, I think, Luca. You must agree. Huh?
Yes, I must. Question. Terroir and aging, but aging is part of a terroir. Terroir in French is not the soil. It's not terre means ground. Terroir is all. Terroir is made by the weather, the raw material, the fermentation, distillation, and aging, and the people working. All these make the terroir. So the aging is part of the terroir.
Yeah, or tradition, you can call it.
Example, now we are doing with Naison, we will launch in a few months a small experiment. We have a free Naison, same age, same distillation, same barrels, aged in 3 different warehouses in the Naison compound. So at 100 meters one from the other. And for first time, we put here in the label, this is a small bottle, 20 cl, we put the temperature average and humidity. And the 3 warehouse, we had about 2 degrees in difference, in 2 centigrade difference, and about 5 points in humidity. And the products are very different. And it will be very nice to take exactly the same product, but only because it was aged in 3 different places in the same area, in Naison compound, the rum is different. This is the terroir.
Luca or Carsten, actually, could you, for some people who probably don't know, can you talk a little bit, because I think a lot of people understand the idea of heat, that they understand the idea of heat on liquid, but I don't think people understand really a lot about what humidity does to the barrel and the liquid inside. Could you maybe talk actually about both of them? So what the heat does, what the humidity does, just so people can get a really clear idea of a cooler, less humid, or a dry cellar versus a wet cellar or a humid cellar.
I think the experiment Luca's just describing is really going to show you these differences, because one of those warehouses might be slightly more humid than the other, so it has an effect. And I really applaud the experiment, Luca. It's a good idea.
And what is the effect, I think? What is the difference between a dry cellar and a humid cellar in terms of what it does to the barrel?
Generally, the mix between the temperature and the humidity makes a different evaporation in the barrel. The ABV change in a different way, and the esterification goes in a different way. Hot and humidity makes faster the process of Angel Scheer, so you lose liquids, and develops more congeners in absolute value, you understand? So in the same place, like in Naison, if you are in a dry cellar, we can say you have a little bit less evaporation, a little bit less esterification, a little bit less esters, and the product is a little bit lighter, right? We can say. But the humidity and temperature influence the Angel Scheer and the esterification. That is, at the end, the process of aging is, if you take, to make an example, my rum in Marie-Galante, when after distillation, fresh rum have about 330 grams per HAP, per hectoliter pure alcohol. And after 4 years, you are about 600. And when you start in the 330 congeners, we have a very small part of esters. But after 4 years, you have quite a lot in the 600 grams, you have quite a lot part of esters. This is the esterification that happens thanks to the humidity, the heat, and the exchange between the air and the barrel. But that means, for me, it's not a question. Generally, it's not I don't like speaking if it's better or not better. It's different.
Yeah,
and surely the original one is the rum that was aged in that place, in the distillery. This is normal.
Yeah, the origin.
And Carsten,
Yeah.
in terms of, say, if we look at the two main warehouses between the Netherlands and Liverpool, what are the differences there in terms of the idea of climate and in terms of and how does that manifest in the rums? Are they quite different? Are they similar?
They would be more similar. However, we don't really age a lot in our Amsterdam warehouse. We have a new Amsterdam warehouse where we're aging. We have warehouse in Liverpool where we're aging, but we also have warehouses in the tropics where we're aging. So we compare the liquids that come out, and but you can't really say there's a big difference between Liverpool and Amsterdam, because they're both sort of moderate climate, moist, near the sea or near a river. So quite similar situations, I would say. The only big difference between our Liverpool warehouse and our Amsterdam warehouse.
I think you might be breaking up a little bit. Can you?
All right.
Can you hear us?
Yeah. Am I still there?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I think we're having a little connection difficulties there, Carsten. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. I think we are having technical difficulties. This was going to happen in 24 hours. Luca, I need you. My wingman.
I found probably one of the oldest bottle. This is a 1750. And was from Jamaica, from Kingston. So now that we speak about the Black Tot, I went to take this bottle and take close to me.
Are you going to share it with us? Are you going to share it with us, Luca?
Yeah, it's not share, to drink. Yes.
Yeah.
When Carsten will be here, we will open.
Good idea.
So Carsten, you're back online. So sorry, Carsten, you were saying between the two, between Liverpool and Netherlands, there's not a lot of difference. And why was that? That was more the continental climate as a whole?
Yeah, actually Liverpool and Amsterdam are both sort of harbor cities, so quite close to the water, and climatically they're quite similar. Liverpool might be a little wetter, although they wouldn't agree with me. But we don't consider that as a major difference because of the climate. But if you consider the warehouses, so our newer aging warehouse in Amsterdam is different in a sense that it is not as thick walled as the one we have at Liverpool. And in that case, you just you have different effects of the building, even not just the climate, but also the situation where the barrels are stored. And even within the building, we have several floors where rum ages slightly differently. So if we were to, for argument's sake, put a cask of one particular mark on different levels in that warehouse, on different floors in the warehouse, and we would take them out at the same time, let's say 5 years later, they would be different because of the different just cellar conditions. And I think Maggie
say those ones.
It's quite funny. Maggie Campbell, I think, had a talk about terroir of the cellar at some point, because you can see that different cellars have different effects. This is also, again, going back to the Nesson experiment that Luca is doing. He's showing you that different cellars located on the same premises even will have a different effect on that same liquid.
And I mean, one thing I remember one of the things I really, really to this day taught me so much about the aging and especially in warm climates was when I went to Taiwan and I visited Kavalan. And on the ground, I mean, it's super hot. I mean, they have 13% angel share evaporation, but then you sort of started climbing up, and it was almost, you couldn't stay up there for more than seconds. I mean, you were just pouring with sweat, and you just think that's so amazing to what's happening in the barrel, because if we're pouring with sweat, what's the barrel doing? And I think it's very interesting about aging in origin. And actually, we've got a little surprise coming in Maggie's session where we will really look at sort of different cellars and timings and everything. So it's super interesting. And Luca, you've done some. I mean, some of my favorite rums. Actually, pretty much all of my favorite rums are yours. And I think a lot of it you focused on working with the distilleries, very much so. And we're going to talk a little bit with Daniele in a couple of sessions' time about this whole idea of working very much with the distilleries, bottling with their names. And is that for you sort of all about the terroir of those distilleries, and you want to really capture that?
You want
to really capture the terroir of those distilleries. So that's why you're working very closely with individual distilleries and not just people like Scheer.
Yes, everybody have a different mission in our work, no? As you know, I go in the Caribbean since for more than 40 years. I adore the Caribbean. I know personally all the distillery and all the producers. And when I started in the 90s to import rum, many distilleries were completely unknown. So my goal was to increase the brand awareness and the reputation of a distillery. For this reason, I am not an independent bottler, but I did always co-bottling with some ideas in packaging, in ABV. Perhaps you bottle only your pot still, but all this work to help the brand awareness, the reputation of a distillery. This is my pleasure, it's my egoism also in a certain way. Carsten do a completely different work. And we have to remember that until a few years ago, the main business for a company like Scheer was and still is to make blend, to make brands, you understand? Not to sell to somebody that make an independent bottling of one cask, perhaps using the name of a distillery and without telling where was aged the rum. For me, the future, to make an example, Black Tot is an example. Black Tot this is the right way to do the job. You make a blend, you have a lot of very good rums. With Scheer, you create this new Black Tot, but a new Black Tot, don't say I am a Jamaican, I am a Demerara, I am a Hampden, I am something else, as was in the past. If we go to see in the past, sometimes Lemon Heart say Demerara or Jamaica rum, but many times not, and then never the name of a distillery. So my job is, my pleasure is not my job, is to do co-bottling that have to help the distillery in its reputation. Also because many times I am the importer in Italy of this distillery. So this work is a team work, you understand?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point you said about blends, and I'd like to bring Carsten in here to talk a little bit more about blends and what's the future here at the moment, because people like Jamaica and Barbados working on their GIs, how's that going to affect you going forward?
Well, the funny thing is that I was watching the live stream just earlier, and there was a lot of talk about blends, and there was Christelle mentioning that we love to have our own branded Hampden rum in a bottle, but don't forget that the economics of the distillery asks for a lot of bulk rum as well. Blending, and I think Black Tot is a very good example of that. I mean, Black Tot blend number 19. Yeah, so this is an example of how we work with you guys. In order to make that blend, we have a wide portfolio of the different distilleries, and we work together with Oliver to put exactly together his idea or your company's idea of Black Tot rum. What do we put together? So we had some Guyana, some Barbados, some Jamaica, and put them in different proportions, and that type of blending, I think, has always been there and will continue in the future, because there will always be, let's say, rum brands without a particular distillery, without owning a distillery. And those brands will need a liquid, and they will have a brand design, they will have a brand idea, and we just help them materialize that brand idea into a liquid, just like we did with Black Top, basically. Really, I think has a future and will always be there, because there's just more and more demand for rum, and I think there's more demand for variation of rum brands than there's even distilleries out there.
And in terms of sort of how things are changing, do you think it'll, with, you know, when Christelle said we only would want to be named on a bottle if we were really confident in the person that's making the product, because, you know, at the end of the day, not yourselves, of course, but there are a lot of people that are blending that aren't doing a good job, say. You know, where's the balance between what you're allowed to write on a label, and maybe this is a Luca question a bit as well, because it's all about that idea of transparency. And I think, you know, the one thing that we're all together passionate about is you've got to tell us what's in the bottle. The consumer wants it. They want to understand it. And, you know, they're crying out for it in food, in drink, in everything. So
it is so important. It is so important. And like Luca said, you know, we will, whenever we send a blend to somebody, we tell you exactly what's in there in terms of, you know, origin, ages, pot still, column still, what type of wood is being used. We give you the complete DNA of those blends. The DNA of the blend is actually, this is a terminology which Florent Bachet, I think, is coming up later on.
Yeah,
he came to us and he says, you know, I want to know the exact DNA of a blend before, so I can talk about it. And he was very, very passionate about that. But what we see is we see a lot of people who want to know exactly where that rum comes from, and not just because of interest, but also because of traceability, because of sustainability, all these aspects of today's world, which we are, you know, in the midst of. We like to be able to trace back our liquids all the way to the distillery. You know, in some cases we would like to go back to the fields where the cane came from, but fact of the matter is that there's fewer and fewer distilleries who actually have their own cane fields and their own molasses and all that. So even in the rum producing world, you'll see that distillation is done by, you know, importing molasses from where they are still producing molasses, and then fermenting and distilling it in a different country. In the future, you'll also see that possibly aging again will be done at source, but it might also go to a different country for aging, as it has done in the past. And we might find some very interesting experiments in the future. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point, because Luca, Caroni, that's what's happened, hasn't it? It was aged in one country and now it's moved to another country to age. And what effect did that? What effect do you think that had on the rum?
No, it's different, because Caroni was moved from Trinidad to Guyana because it was impossible at that moment to stock in Trinidad. So I have to decide. I didn't like to import in Europe for my role, and so at that time, Jesus Perso was so kind to let me stock in Guyana. So it was an exceptional situation, but it will be nice. Also, as Carsten say, perhaps I don't know. Florida is a tropical region. You can do something in Florida, to make an example. But for me, it's the transparency. You know, it's different. Distillery is a distillery. And we have to respect the distillery. You understand? Then there is another job, build brands. And I think the future also of independent bottlers will be create their blend, like their product. Because, I don't know, I have Velier Royal Navy. If I put a good rum, if Carsten could help me to do a good Velier Royal Navy, in 10 years, it will be recognized as a good rum, as was Lemon Heart in the 50s or 60s. It's my brand. This is the future for me, for the independent bottlers. Or, to be very clear, when they bottle a cask, because there is also a big difference. The Angel Share means also a difference in price, because if you lose 10% or 2% is different. But also a single cask. I came to Liverpool with Carsten, and I tasted a Guyana rum, the Demerara rum, that was fantastic. You understand? If it's still there, I will buy. Also, if it is Continental aging.
Shall I send Sekinda over now, quickly?
Okay, we do a match. So Carsten will earn more money. But understand,
of the barrel.
Yeah, okay. So the important is to be clear. For me, it's very important to respect the distillery, and my pleasure, this is my personal pleasure, is to give value to a distillery. But distillery, as Carsten say, many distillery probably have closed. The survivors are survivors because Carsten helped to buy and sell, to make brand. This was the real work. To make brand, to sell to Chanel, to sell to confectionery, to do other things. Then I come to Carsten, I make the blend with him, and then I have my brand. And I built my brand. I have not to tell the ingredients, because this is the transparency become not transparency. Because if I write Jamaican rum or I put a Hampden, people think that is the real Hampden, the original one. And this could be better. I don't discuss about this, but it's not the original one. So are different business. Distillery have to be respected in the trademark, and people have to recognize easily that this is Nason, means that was produced, fermented, distilled, aged, and bottled at Nason. You understand? And then there is another great business. If you are a good chef, if you are a good bartender, you make a fantastic blend, and you have to believe in your product and build your brand. Why I have to use my Velier Royal Navy Tiger Shark? For me, it's a great, great rum. And was all tropical, but I didn't put the name of a distillery to show that I feel proud of my product. And in 5 years, the Tiger Shark will become a brand that it will be consumed in different countries. You understand? Are two different jobs. So the Carsten work is very, very important, because it's like give a lot of colors to the painter, to the bartender. You understand? And so you can make the product that you like, that you think is nice to sell. This is the reason why share will be always there. But in the meantime,
and I think
we have to give value to the distillery.
Yeah, very much so. And we have to respect their trademarks. We have to respect their particular tradition. We always buy from distilleries, and we look for exactly the tradition. So we don't ask them to produce something specially for us, but if we buy from Hampden, we buy all the different marks, and we respect that, and we think that their tradition in producing that particular rum is what they're good at. We use it in blends, and if somebody wants to know if there's Hampden in the blend, we will tell that there's Hampden in the blend. And we'll also tell them, you cannot use the word Hampden, you cannot use the word Hampden Estate, you cannot use that type of word on any labels, because we make very, very good disclosure or non-disclosure agreements with our producers, so that it is crystal clear what can be used and what cannot be used on labels for those who are using the liquid. It's it's all about respect. I think Luca has a good point there.
Absolutely, and actually, Carsten, that's a good question, because I think, how do you be transparent but still respect the distilleries, and how can you say this is a rum that has Jamaica in it, or has how do you communicate to the customer? Is it just through telling them on a back label or on a website and not on the main label? How do you communicate to the consumer that, okay, we can't talk about Worthy Park being in this bottle, we can't talk about Hampden being in this bottle? How do we intimate to them that there's some absolutely awesome liquid in there, and go about that?
Well, it's our responsibility to disclose to our customers what is in that liquid, but it's also our responsibility to educate them about, although there might be Worthy Park in your rum, you don't need to use that name, because Worthy Park is a trademark for Worthy Park. There's Worthy Park rum, and if you're using that as a component in a liquid, it's going to be a good component. I'll tell you it's a good component, but you must rely on the product that you are selling, be it Tiger Shark or be it whatever. You are selling Tiger Shark. You're not selling Worthy Park.
Mm.
I think that's also the point that Luca's trying to make, is that why rely on the merit or the reputation of others when you're building your own brand?
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you must have seen a huge increase in the last year and a bit. Sorry, Luca, do you want to jump in?
No, I say, I think it's normal that the Carsten customer that want to build a brand, and perhaps Carsten makes some different samples and different blend, ask what you have put inside, and Carsten very probably tell him the 98% of the truth. Because for instance, bartenders sometimes don't tell you the recipe. You understand? There is a small secret, no? So why, in the opposite, you won't put all the ingredients, say Hampton, that is a trademark, Foursquare? No. When you speak between the brand owner and the brand producer, it's normal that customers say, here you have Hampton and you have a little bit of Foursquare, aged in Continental for 7 years and 2 years there. This is normal. But when you go to the market, why you have to tell your secret, or as Carsten say, use the reputation of a brand when this is Hampton, but it's not aged in Hampton, and then you have to explain that was aged X time in Tropics, X time there. You sell your Tiger Shark, your Negrita, your Lemon Heart, that are so famous. Myers did the same. Myers never told in the 1930 if inside there was Mount Eagle or was Myers. Why? Because you have to build your brand. You have to believe in your product. You have to be a good bartender using Carsten with his experience and his colors. You understand? So instead of changing the name of a company, because I have Habitation Velier, you never change the name. I think we have to change the fact that it's better to don't use a name that are not perfectly correct or create a confusion. You understand?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, responsibility of brand owners.
Build your brand. That if you are a good blender, or if you use a good blender, you will win. And then this is your product. Understand? This is my position.
And I think, you're 100% right. A brand should be a brand, and it should stand behind the merits of its own liquid. And I think, Carsten, you must have seen in the last few years a massive increase in people wanting to blend rums again. I think I'm approached every other day by someone that wants to start a new rum brand or what have you. And I almost think we're in a position where, I want great liquid. I only want to sell great liquid. I mean, we all do. But, it's a balance between having an amazing, more brands out there so more people come into the category, but keeping the quality. And how, as a blender, do you balance that? I've talked to a couple of sort of the big distillers of gin, and one lady was like, they wanted me to make a fluorescent gin. She goes, I put my foot down. When do you say no, almost?
Well, we do cater very much to the ideas of brand people. So if somebody has an idea, and that could be, sometimes it could be great ideas, and sometimes the ideas might not be so great. I mean, you get a lot of people coming up with a story about pirates, and they want a liquid to match that. So we just very much go through all the dimensions of how to put a blend together with the customer, and then sort of put some liquids together which fit their story. A bad story, you might get a bad rum. A good story, you might get a good rum. Sometimes bad stories also get good rums in our case, but that's because we're proud of what we're doing. We do not play with aroma. So that's stuff where we put our foot down. We don't want to put aroma or any additives or anything, which is not rum into a rum blend, because there is already so many types of rum you can blend together, and you can create so many great liquids just by putting real rum together, real traditional produced rum from a good distiller. Use that and blend with it. You don't need any aromas or additives or I don't know what people will try to put inside, unless it specifically is for a spiced rum. Then we'll give them a good base, and then the spiced rum is there's a concoction going to be added to it, which we don't really understand, spicing rum, so they will have specialists to do the spices. So we put our foot down in adding additives, in fact.
Which is great. And actually, we've had a really interesting question from Harp. Will the lack of common rum standards, categories, etc., be a blocker to the standard consumer? How do we as the rum community and Luca, I mean, you're the king of this. You were the first person that sort of looked at categorization properly and really kind of took it forward. But how do we give the consumer a common theme with rum? How do we bring that forward so that when a consumer knows that they're tasting X, that's what they're getting, and almost in the same way as the Scotch Malt Whisky Society or the Scotch whiskey industry has done, and the American bourbon industry. How do we give the customer frameworks to allow them to navigate the rum world, especially now?
Personally, I did some years ago the classification that is for me, is the right classification, because in rum we have many differences. In raw material, we think molasses, fresh sugar cane, but no, we have also syrup, cooked juice, dander used in the fermentation. So already the raw materials are so different. Then you can have organic sugar cane, not organic sugar cane, different varietals, and then you can make fermentation with wild yeast, you can make fermentation with selected yeast, you can make continuous fermentation, you can do a very short fermentation, you can do a very long fermentation. So rum is very different. And also is the pleasure and the difference between rum and other categories, spirits. But you could have the best sugar cane, the best fermentation, but if you distill in a multi-column, you lose, and you produce ethanol, 96% ethanol, you lose all these. For this reason, my classification was born about distillation. Distillation is not the most important part. Everything is important. First of all, the raw material. We speak not enough about the raw material. You can't go in a 3-star Michelin and have a good fish if the fish is frozen or if it's 2 weeks old. You understand? So we have in the future look more at the raw material. Fermentation is enormously important, but the distillation could change completely the profile of all the works you did in the fields and then in fermentation. So for me, the big difference is artisanal rum and industrial rum. In the artisanal rum, then we can call single rum, you can call as you want, single blended, but it's important that the professionals find a common way to define the product, as happened in a Scotch whiskey. Single malt is very young, is 1964. Was Charles Gordon, Glenfiddich, decided to bottle his batch distillation, say pure single malt. Why pure? Pure means only. Single malt means only pot still, double distillation from one distillery malt. You understand? For this was called pure. because before there were blends between grain whiskey and malt whiskey, batch distillation and continuous distillation. So for me now it's time, and the rum start to be closer and behind the single malt. A rum auctioneer. Who imagined 10 years ago that in the auction you could have a rum auctioneer, not cognac auctioneer? And this happens thanks to all the artisanal producer or producer that make batch distillation to maintain the aromatic profile, so the congeners. The congeners are the aromatic profile, you understand? So a batch distillation rum, a single blended, like Foursquare to make an example, these have to be recognized by the rum lovers with some definition. I did my classification. We know that rum is produced everywhere in the world, so it's impossible to have a international legislation, and then the international legislation are all controlled by the lobbies. If not, I don't understand how it's possible that in rum we allowed 20 grams per liter, that is very much, and you can call a rum. But I think that what is important is to give a value to the quality producer who produce not a commodity and then you sell, but you really make a human fantastic work with the savoir-faire, and so the artisanal rum. For me, the artisanal rum are the pot still, the batch distillation, and the single blend, and the rum agricole that are also a distillation that is made to have congeners. Today we have rums that have less than 50 grams per hecto liter. Grams, you know. In a blind tasting, you don't recognize a vodka from him. And if you make a daiquiri, you will never recognize. And in the 1905, the first chemistry professor went to the Caribbean and to find sophistication and so and so and so. And they say a rum that have less than 200 grams in tasting, we can't recognize if it's a true rum. You understand? So when it's a long discussion, but when you have congeners, when you make a artisanal craft distillation or a batch distillation or in a traditional column, and then you can make a blend. This is the great category of the top rums that can compete very well against the single malts.
And Carsten, for you, how do you feel that, you know, how do you communicate to a consumer, especially with so many blends? You know, what's your feeling on how do we educate the consumer and get them to understand rum better?
Basically, that's not our position in the market. Our position is to educate brand owners about how they can educate their customers, what they can tell their customers. So we're just very transparent in what we supply as a liquid, and you know, it's the next one in the chain who actually has to do all the hard work, so to speak. And we do the easy work. We just put stuff together and make a blend, and then somebody needs to tell the consumer bottle by bottle what is in there. And just getting back to...
I don't think that's 100% true. I think you do a lot more than just play around. I think you do some amazing work. But you know, I think it's interesting to say that, you know, it is our job as the ambassadors to go out and talk to it. And are you seeing more of that now from people, or?
There's a lot more education in the market, and you can see that you get that back. I mean, the term rum geek is I've heard the term rum geek a few times now. It's a relatively recent thing, but you see a lot of real spirit enthusiasts picking up on rum and really appreciating the product and all the ins and outs. And there is so much information. There's so much to learn. There is so many different styles and types, and and things to find out. People write about it, people rave about it, people talk about it. We love these people because the more talk about rum, the more the category grows, and the more the category grows, the more rums we sell, basically. Mm. Going back to Luca's point about the artisanal rum, in his classification, that might be the Mount Everest of rum. That's the peak. That is what a lot of producers might aspire to. There is a lot of producers who do not, really go that far. They have multi-column stills. They still have proud, they're proud of their product. They're proud of what they produce. We buy a lot of that as well, and we do use that in blending with maybe the pinnacle of rum, in creating blends of, combination of these things. I think there is a consumer for both ends. Not everybody can always afford only the top of the Mount Everest. Some people will not be able to climb the whole thing, but might enjoy the view from the bottom.
And I think you have to start somewhere, and I think that's an awesome point, Carsten. I think I remember sort of my rum journey wasn't at the top. I wish it was. But now I've grown and I've changed and my palate's developed, and I think that's super important. And now I'm definitely drinking at the top. It's hurting my bank balance quite a lot. Every time I have to buy another one of Luca's products, I bankrupt myself for the month. But I think that's the exciting journey, isn't it? It's how do we take the customer from those products that are mass market, for want of a better word, for general consumer. The only way we're going to keep building on rum's sort of trajectory, which at the moment is so exciting because it is on a trajectory like this. I see it. It's my second biggest category at the Whisky Exchange, which I'm so excited by because it wasn't when I joined. It went whiskey, gin. Now screw gin. Gin is out, thank God. And rum's there.
You really see the premiumization in the requests we get. Is that you don't get a request for a bog standard supermarket bottom shelf rum. You get them, but not many. New requests are all about we want something special, we want something premium. We're aiming for an expression which is close to our belief or close to our heart. We have organic rums, fair trade rums. You have all sorts of things like that going along. People want an expression where they combine pot stills from Barbados with a pot still from God knows where, another origin, because they believe that those two origins are in their story very important. We have customers doing 5 origins and putting it together, 7 origins putting it together. It's all possible because we have so many great producers and so many great liquids to put together.
And I think over this 24 hours we're gonna see all of those amazing people, and that's what's so exciting. And and I think you're right. You've got
a lot of familiar names there.
On journey, Luca, I'm there. Tell me.
Now I do a little bit of a bad boy.
You could be a bad
boy,
Luca.
Following what Carsten said, the future today, the mainstream rum are like Drambuie. But Drambuie is not called a blended Scotch. It is a liqueur. The future is in the blended rums, good rums. Because in fact, when we speak about the Hampden single cask, we are really in a niche. We are in the rum mix, fantastic. But the big change will be when rum, the good rum, really rum, not sweetened, will become in the same category of a blended whiskey and sometimes battered rum made with a pot still, made with the 5 different origins. This is the future, to not produce 300 bottles or 2,000 bottles, but to produce also quite big quantity, but of a real rum. So we have to pass from Drambuie, and perhaps if I am the king of the world, I will...
You are the king of the world, Luca. No. In my mind, you're the king of the world.
If I will be the king of the world, COVID will be different. No, but apart this,
we're not going there, Luca. I'm getting the megaphone out.
Passing to Drambuie to blended means a real rum made with a natural 100% rum distilled everywhere, a good blend, and perhaps one day it will be blend made also in the tropics, not only continental or a mix as today. This is the future of a category, the mainstream category, and where it will be the business.
Yeah.
Then we will have always, and for this reason, I want to really, with my art and also for my business, I want to help the distilleries, the top distilleries, the single rum, single blend distillery, to become known, because single malt did a big movement for all the whiskies. You understand? Johnny Walker started to do Johnny Walker Blue, and nobody was against the single malts. Perhaps also was the same owners, but apart this, you understand? So the top of the pyramid will help rum to become upgrade the rum, but then the business will be in probably blended. You understand?
Yeah,
I think you have to have it's the balance, isn't it? It's the balance of the two. The blended rums need to be there to help the distilleries, as you pointed out earlier, keep going. Without that there's only a small market at the moment for those single distillery rum, single distillery rums. That blended market is so big, and I think it's Luca. We're here to take the customer on a journey. That's our job, Carsten's just got to make the great liquid. You've got to make the great liquid. I've just got to tell the customers that they have to drink the great liquid. And hopefully that's kind of what we're doing today. And just kind of as a sum up, what, Luca, you've talked about the Nissan project. Do you have anything else coming up that's super exciting that we need to know about? I know we've got some of Maggie's rum on the water.
I could not, they told me that I could not show, so I will show very quickly.
Come on, Luca. Yay! I love you, Luca.
No, we have a
Let's
project.
Get that slowed down, folks.
We have a project with Appleton. It will be the first time in the history that Appleton will bottle a vintage rum, 100% pot still, in a co-bottling with me, and Joy Spence, that is the number one. And also
we've got Joy coming later.
Yeah, also this
project, super excited.
Don't tell her that I spoke about this really, because they fire me, but is especially to show some of the colors that Joy has in his warehouse to produce the Appleton, the standard SKUs, you understand? So this is a project. Then in 1 week, we will have a Providence, our Haitian rum, not Claren, Haitian rum, and double distillation. The one problem for Carsten and also for me, on the other hand, that now the distillery are few. I would like to work in Scheer in 1942. We had 50 distilleries, 23 distilleries in Jamaica, 100 distilleries in Martinique. So now we have no many distilleries. So please build some distillery to give some new colors to Carsten and to all the others.
You can talk to the man upstairs. He might be able to build you a distillery, Luca.
Yeah.
Well, persuade Sukinda to build a rum distillery.
Tell him to call me. We have to be together in India.
Yeah, definitely.
Now
I hear.
To do another distillery also in another country, but it's not it's a little bit a secret. I will distribute in few 1 month River Antoine, from Grenada.
Oh wow!
But only 1,000 bottles. More a pleasure than others.
Can you say some, please, Luca?
And then I did an exploration in Ecuador and in Colombia, but for white rums to find artisanal, AAA, my natural wine movement. I am attracted by the when the farmer and the distiller are the same person. This is the real.
Yeah.
This is the difference in Claren. What is Claren?
Mm-hmm.
Claren could be fresh sugarcane juice.
Here's one I made earlier.
Thank you. Could be syrup. Could be syrup plus thunder. But Claren have to be the same person that work in the field and distill. This is the definition of Claren. Today there are some Claren that are called Claren in Haiti that are made by traders that buy the sugar cane or the syrup. These are not really Claren. Claren have to be like this. So I like to develop, I believe also a lot in the white rums. A white whiskey, a fresh whiskey, is not very interesting, you know. Sugar cane is, or molasses have a part. So you see.
I'm going to send you an amazing new make from a whiskey distiller. I'm going to send you something next week. You're going to taste it. You're going to love it. From a whiskey distiller.
Whiskey.
Yeah, so very interesting. New make.
I'm working in the fresh rums.
Not whiskey.
Yes. Not whiskey.
Dawn, you have to realize we're one-track people. Yeah, so we have there's only one road ahead, and that's rum.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot I'm a woman. I can multitask.
It's impossible for me.
So, Carsten, anything? Sorry, Luca?
I say Arak is our borderline. We arrive just to the Arak, not over.
As long as it's made from sugar cane, huh?
As long as it's cane and not champagne. So, Carsten, for you, is there anything really exciting coming down the line? Is there any, I mean, maybe you can't talk about projects with other people, but is there anything you're seeing or anything you're working on? I mean, Ollie's going to talk about the black tots that are coming down the line, which is super exciting, but anything you're like, or country, or what's exciting you right now?
Well, there's a lot of exciting projects sort of in the pressure cooker, which obviously I will not and cannot talk about because we don't talk about individual clients' projects. The only project I can talk about is a potential project with Luca in the future, which would be interesting again. I'm sure a lot of the rum nerds would be very interested in looking at that. Apart from that, I think the most interesting thing is that we do still find origins, new origins, non-traditional origins where rum is being produced, and we're bringing all this stuff to Amsterdam to make it available for use in blends. Sometimes with origin, sometimes without origin, sometimes with the name of a distillery, sometimes without. So think about we've increased our position in Australia, in Thailand, Philippines, places like that.
Super exciting.
So the eastern end, obviously Latin America, Caribbean, South America, all those places. We've brought some stuff over from the US, which we have further aging up in Liverpool now. Plenty of things going on, I can say. And there is always the Treasure Cove in Liverpool. It is a collection of rare and old casks up there, and a lot of people are cherry picking their casks there. Plenty of interesting things to find. There's a few crown jewels which I know that Luca is after, maybe Sukhinder might be after. But
probably both.
We'll have to do some contest, some form of contest between them to see who gets some of those things.
A rum showdown in one corner, Luca. In the other corner, Sukhinder. I can see it now. I want to be there. I can be the person in the middle.
We have also a project in Australia.
Yeah.
I'm super excited about Australia. Actually, Australia is one of the countries that really, I mean, like every time I taste, I'm excited.
Steve McGarry.
Yeah, Beanley is fantastic.
One of a sleeping, because it was part of British Royal Navy, is very old distillery. They have a pot still that was like the Port Morant, then they changed So we have a project with them also.
Yeah.
And then I do very quickly something with Carsten. Because many people, and then we did this small bottle. You see, this is a small Caroni 20 cl. Because I understood that I did a mistake when we did the Continental versus Tropical. If you want to take, you have to buy 4 bottles. It was a little bit expensive. So I say we have to do the 20 centiliters, and the real rum lovers can taste this product. And I would like to tell the last thing, that when we did this project, many people thought that Velier and Luca was the devil was Carsten, or for Carsten, Luca was the devil. Instead of, for a rum lover, 300 years of experience in rum, and we speak exactly the same language, and we are straight and good and fair people. I was so happy to do something with him, and I hope to continue to do, only to show, to give a service to the gourmet rum lovers.
Yeah, it's like there's a lot of respect. We have a lot of respect between us, and we're like rum brothers, but from a different mother, huh? But it's and I think just a shout out to the whole rum community and what's going on here today. Look at all the respect that we have amongst each other, and the love which is being shared. I mean, it's all for good, right? Any rum we can educate people to drink, and any rum we can educate people about all these different types and all these different styles and all these different possibilities there are, the better it is. It's let's grow the category and keep making it fun as you're doing today. Thank you for today. Really appreciate that. It's a tribute to blend.
Thank you.
It's a tribute to good rum. It's a tribute to history and a tribute to tradition. And you're bringing in a lot of these people who are very knowledgeable about their field, and I really appreciate that.
No, I mean, I can't tell you how much Mitch and I'll bring Mitch in actually, because Mitch deserves a hell of a lot of the credit for today. Mitch, my partner in crime.
I've been loving listening to your session. It's been absolutely.
We haven't really talked about tropical aging. We've just talked about everything, which is Dawn going rogue as normal. But no, I mean, like, Luca's taught me so much about rum, and is probably the reason that I drink far too expensive styles now, and probably the person that's responsible for making me buy half the UK's allocation of Soju, because it's me drinking it all. I am that much obsessed by Soju. But I've never met you, Carsten, in the flesh, but I'm super excited. You sent me some samples the other day of some of the Australian stuff, which I'm so excited to open. I've been working on Black Top for quite some time, so I haven't been able to do my day job. Funny that. But I think what we wanted to do, both Mitch and I, we're super passionate about bringing people together. That's kind of the thing that makes us tick. And we are so honored to have you both. Luca knows how much I love him. Carsten, I now love you. Luca will tell you that's a bad thing. No, it's been absolutely fantastic, and we're I can't wait for the new releases, Luca. I'm already tapping Chris Seal on the shoulder, saying, "Where's my stuff from Velier?" Poor Daniele gets a message from me every other day saying, and Carsten, I can't wait to see what happens with Black Top, because I don't want to give anything away, but we're super excited with what's going on there. So, gentlemen, thank you. We love you very much.
Thank you so much.
Ciao.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, well, that was nothing about tropical aging, so God knows what happened there. I just got excited by
not like a conversation with Luca Gargano to go off kilt, no?
I think it was actually me and not Luca that went off kilt on that one. But no, that was absolutely amazing. And we're super lucky to have people like that on board. And I am very excited for our next guest, Mitch, because that is thirsty for a daiquiri. Oh, yeah.
It's daiquiri time.
Daiquiri time. I don't even know what time it is, but it's daiquiri time.